All right, welcome back. One of the teams in the league that people thought may make a move at the trade deadline didn't necessarily have to, but they have a very aggressive general manager. Philadelphia Eagles, Howie Roseman, did not make a move. There's been other trading deadlines. He's made a move. He's probably the most aggressive GM in the league with Brett Veach at Kansas City. They make a lot of moves. We don't trust the coach. But Philadelphia is kind of okay with what they've got. And it's interesting because Dan Campbell's a coach. His opening press conference, a lot of us looked and went, wow, biting kneecaps, I don't know. But over time, Dan Campbell has solidified himself well before this year, last year, the year before, as a culture creator, beloved in the locker room, very, very strong alpha leader. It works. Sirianni got hired the same year. His opening press conference was brutal. Didn't have a lot of allies in the football community that said he was ready for it. And frankly, a month ago, we didn't know if he was going to make it to Thanksgiving. So it's always felt wobbly and wonky in Philadelphia. But if you do look, there are exceptions to everything. Can Nick Sirianni win a Super Bowl? If you go to the last 12 coaches that have won a Super Bowl, you got Andy Reid multiple times, Belichick multiple times. You got a Bruce Arians. You got Pete Carroll, John Harbaugh, Sean McVay. And then you got Doug Pederson. Well, Doug Pederson's about to get fired in Jacksonville. And Doug Pederson not only won, he won a Super Bowl over Brady and Belichick with Nick Foles. So he won with a backup. And I think from the outside, people like me look at Philadelphia and think, I don't know if this is going to work. I think people inside the building in Philadelphia, like Jeffrey Lurie, the owner, and Howie Roseman, inside the building are like, work. Jalen Hurts is a lot better than Nick Foles. And we think Nick Sirianni is better than Doug Pederson. I mean, if you go back to that year they won with Doug Pederson, the roster was great. The quarterback got hot. They got healthy at the right time, and Doug Pederson stayed out of the way. And they got a little bit of a break because Minnesota was using the backup in the playoffs. Case Keenum, Aaron Rodgers got hurt that year. Of the 10, 10 of the 12 or 11 of the 12 coaches, I don't know how we even brand Gary Kubiak. Solid. Manning loved him, won a Super Bowl. I don't know. We don't consider him bad, good. He's just like a good coach. He's solid B+ coach. But I think Doug Pederson, if you're a Philadelphia fan, I think you look at that and think, well, is Nick Sirianni younger version of Doug Pederson with a much better quarterback, and I think that's fair. History shows in politics and sports and business there are exceptions, and the one team that did it as an exception with a backup quarterback and a coach about to be fired for a second time is the Philadelphia Eagles. So at the trading deadline, I'm thinking they need to tweak this thing. They have to get better. Their takeaway is we did it before, and we like this coach and this quarterback. It's a coach-quarterback league much more, and now we have Saquon Barkley, who is like the human eraser for all their issues. Any issue Philadelphia has, they hand it off to Saquon Barkley, and he solves the riddle. J-Mac with the news.
Okay. Yeah, the Eagles got lucky for winning that Super Bowl because it's so lucky to go up against Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Did Patrick Mahomes get lucky for going up against an injured Miami Dolphins Tua team? A decimated defense. They were literally were signing practice squad players. How about the Buffalo Bills, who were also decimated by injuries defensively? How about going up against Brock Purdy in the Super Bowl and Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Two quarterbacks that Colin doesn't think are that great. Pretty average quarterbacks. Jimmy Garoppolo's not even in the league anymore. Is that lucky? So like, what are we talking about here? Like, lucky. The Eagles were the best team in the NFL every single week that year. So like, what? They got unlucky. The quarterback who was going to win the MVP got injured, Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was balling out. And honestly, even with the injury, he still should have won the MVP award. He played enough games and did enough for that team. So, lucky? Lucky? Okay. Sure, it was lucky that Nick Foles, and that offense decimated a backup quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. Like, what? What? That doesn't even make sense. None of that makes sense. But let's talk about this year. I know that I had to have upset a lot of Philadelphia Eagles fans, so I need to just, say that out loud. But does Philly have a roster for a Super Bowl run? 1,000%, absolutely. Did they need to make tweaks? I don't know what tweaks they would have made that would have made this measurable difference. I think you could have made the argument to go out and get another wide receiver because A.J. Brown kind of keeps going down and you want that depth there, right? You could make that argument that it's like you go out and maybe get another wide receiver but they kind of already did that in the offseason, right? So it's like all the moves that they could have made, they already made, right? Like these were moves that have already been made. So I'm just not so sure that there's so much more to do at this point, quite frankly. So the rest is just hoping that they stay healthy. And again, you can only have so many backups in depth at positions. There's only so much to do, right? And they pretty much have it all taken care of. It's just a matter of, can they execute? But listen, I actually posted a video about, defending Sirianni and talking about how everyone clearly really likes him, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's automatically a great coach. But I kind of went on a whole rant defending him. And so I'm not going to repeat myself with all of this. But what I want to say is that, and this is what I said weeks ago now, that the truth is, and this is what Colin kind of highlighted, but he didn't say it out loud really, is that it's like 70-80% of Super Bowls are won by Hall of Fame coaches, right? They just are. And typically with Hall of Fame quarterbacks. So it matters tremendously who your coach is, right? And so then you have to ask yourself, is Nick Sirianni a Hall of Fame coach? And if the answer is no, you got to keep on keeping on. And a lot of people, are like, oh, right, you're just going to find a Hall of Fame coach. No, it's not that easy, but you got to take chances. Just like how you're going to be aggressive going out and getting players. It was aggressive to trade for A.J. Brown. It was aggressive to have Carson Wentz as your quarterback, but go draft Jalen Hurts, right? It's aggressive to go out and pay money to Saquon Barkley that a lot of people said you overpaid for him. What are you doing? Everyone made fun of the Philadelphia Eagles for paying Saquon what they paid him. Now, are you kidding me? The production that he's given, you double that price and say, hey, I paid double for Saquon. Of course you would. You wouldn't pay $20 million a year right now for what Saquon Barkley is doing? Of course you would. You don't think every single team in the NFL wants a Saquon Barkley? They do. So sometimes you got to take that same approach. The Eagles were aggressive in getting Chip Kelly, right? They were. They took a chance. I know it didn't work out, but they were still aggressive. And that first year, like his sped up offense and all of that really kind of, shook the NFL for a minute. Again, it didn't last and it wasn't sustainable, but it was a swing. Doug Pederson was not, right? That was the whole thing when Pederson got hired. It was all like, oh, they're trying to return to the Andy Reid days or whatever. And then moving on from Doug Pederson, firing him after he won a Super Bowl, obviously. There's a statue outside of the link that he apparently has never even seen. They fired him. That's aggressive. That is absolutely aggressive. But now hiring Nick Sirianni was not aggressive. And firing him at this point would not be aggressive. So I am of the mentality, and I've said this, that the Philadelphia Eagles are too great of a franchise, too iconic, too valuable, and have too high of expectations, and are too historic to not have an all-time great coach, a top elite coach that around the NFL people go, oh, if only we could find that guy. That's who the Philadelphia Eagles deserve. You realize that the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, is apparently going to be selling a small part of the team, minority share, whatever. And the team is now valued to be second to only the Dallas Cowboys in value. That's extraordinary. That's extraordinary. The Philadelphia Eagles are one of the most popular teams in the world, especially in the NFL, right? They're like top 5 in ratings, top 3 in ratings, top 10 definitely top 10 in, valuation, right? Like, this is a team where, and I've said this so many times now, for the last 25 years, are one of the winningest teams in the NFL, with the second or third most playoff wins in the last 25 years, right? With this, like, the second most NFC championship game appearances. They've been to more Super Bowls in the last 7 years than, like, more than half the league has just playoff appearances. So the Philadelphia Eagles, they have that. They have the fan base. Players want, and this is what I always emphasize. Players desperately want to come to Philly. They love Philly. They love the Eagles. It is iconic. They know what the fan base is there. They know the culture there. Players love it. It brings them to tears when they have to leave or if they're retiring. Right? I mean, we've seen it from the true greats to even just the guys who just kind of came and went. Right? Terrell Owens still lists the Philadelphia Eagles as his favorite place ever with the best fan base. And it did not end well with Philly there, obviously. And yet he still says that. I mean, they asked him on a radio show, hey, what was your best experience? The 49ers or the Cowboys? Who were the best fans? And he goes, you guys are going to hate me for saying this, but it's Philly. And they were like stunned by it. So you can't sit on average if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. This roster's too elite to not get to another Super Bowl, to not win a Super Bowl. And I understand that the pushback for Sirianni is always, well, like, look what he did. People don't like that Colin keeps comparing him to Dan Campbell. Because people then say, did Dan Campbell ever go to a Super Bowl? Right? And the answer is obviously no. And they're like, did Dan Campbell make the playoffs every single year that he's coaching? The answer is no. But the Eagles had a more superior roster than the Lions. Maybe not now, right? Maybe now it's a lot more equal. And then also the whole thing is like, well, look, Dan Campbell has Ben Johnson, right? Sirianni had Shane Steichen, but Shane Steichen left, obviously. So for me, I will always bang on this drum. The Philadelphia Eagles, if you want to sustain excellence, you have to find a great young offensive head coach. That's what you need to do. You need to find a great young offensive head coach. They need to find their Sean McVay, their Shanahan, their Kevin O'Connell, right? It's not to say that those guys are perfect and flawless, right? I'm not saying that. But it adds such sustainability and groundedness to an organization. It makes it so much easier to evaluate. Think of the issues that Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles had last year. There was all this talk of like, is it Jalen Hurts? Is it injuries? Is it the coordinators? Is it, we couldn't figure it out. If Sean McVay is your head coach, Shanahan, Kevin O'Connell, whoever it may be, Andy Reid, obviously, you don't have to question the coaching. You don't have to question the play calling, the game plan, whatever it may be. You're going to know there's problems. Okay, it's them. Right? Dallas Cowboys right now struggling with Dak. And it's like, well, is Mike McCarthy the problem or is Dak just not good? Is Mike McCarthy actually a really good coach, but Dak is just not good enough? Right? Like you're constantly playing that game. That is the problem that you run into. So for me, going into this season, I had been adamant about anything short of a Super Bowl run. Sirianni's got it. He would have to go. He would have to go. I do think Sirianni can still grow and get better, but who honestly has true confidence in Nick Sirianni? And where does that confidence come from? For making the playoffs a few years ago, his first year, when they then got rolled by the Bucks, and then losing in the Super Bowl, which was, obviously not necessarily his fault at all. And then the following year, obviously, not having a good season, getting rolled by the Bucks again. And again, we can point to injuries, we can point to all of these things. I get it. I do. But typically, even with injuries, when you have circumstances less than perfect, the great coaches still find a way to make it competitive. Look what Shanahan did with Jimmy Garoppolo. Almost beat Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Look what Sean McVay did with not this perfect team with the Rams just last year alone, almost beating the Detroit Lions. And then now look at the Cowboys. Mike McCarthy, Dak Prescott, they got rolled, right? Really great teams with great coaches no matter the circumstances, outside of maybe like having your quarterback go down, they typically are not getting rolled in the playoffs. Of course it can happen, right? Of course it can happen. Peyton Manning, right? Super Bowl, right? So it can happen. But it's just it's an outlier. It's not common. Just like having a backup quarterback win a Super Bowl. So the Philadelphia Eagles are definitely familiar with outliers here. But you know what? They could have went back-to-back Super Bowls if it wasn't for Alshon dropping that pass. Or what did it just like go through his hands, then it was intercepted? I forget. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the Philadelphia Eagles? Do you think that Philly should have made a move at the trade deadline? How do you feel about Nick Sirianni and the Super Bowl? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.